Good evening, everyone. Just giving everybody a few minutes here to get ready. I like doing these lives instead of recording in this guest bedroom here and editing and putting it out a day or two later. I just enjoy this stuff. So I hope you like the live presentation here as opposed to the canned and edited response. So it looks like we are live here. I'm going to give everybody about 30, 40 seconds here to get settled in. Going to do a quick rundown of what's happening in money, politics, and religion in this country, and hopefully give you guys some good information to go back as we get through an election season and give you some ammunition. There's a lot of stuff that you hear about Trump and you hear the other side that I think is pertinent information that most people just don't know yet, and I think that is something we definitely need to talk about tonight. So give everybody just a few seconds here, and we'll get started. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I know it's late. I record all these things. All these lives are recorded. So if you can't catch us here at night, I'm very sporadic, a very, very, very busy man these days with a lot of different stuff going on, projects, work, stuff like that, as well as trying to help with some humanitarian stuff and keep up with faith and with ministry, just trying to do my best to get this thing down here. I'm astounded at how anyone can hold down a job or have anything else to do and do podcasting at the same time every day and produce this content. I just tip my cap to all of them. Or maybe they don't work. Maybe that's their full-time job. Either way, I think it's really cool that we're doing that as citizen journalists and just people trying to explain that. I'm not a revealing new information person. I'm here to make sense of the chaos of the world. I mean, that's really what I do with these episodes here. So a lot of this information you can find elsewhere. We'll have an interview coming out tomorrow with Dr. Frank, former head of hurricane research in this country, in Florida, who was a meteorologist for years. Extremely, extremely intelligent guy. It took us a while to edit the files. They're professional grade files that we got from a studio. So thank you, Jordan, if you watch this, for your hard work to get that together. Great conversation. Actually talked a lot about the climate change hoax, and about the way that this climate change hoax is being used to install communism in nations throughout the world. Hearing that from someone else, especially somebody who's as experienced as Dr. Frank, was really, really cool. So I hope that you enjoy that interview coming out. Got another interview coming up on Monday. Monday, we're going to try to do that live. It's going to be with one of the helping hands out there. I'll give you his name when we go live. But another podcaster has been on Discovery Channel and all types of stuff. He's going to give us the lowdown directly from Asheville and give you that information there. So if you have questions or anything you'd like us to ask these folks as they come out, please get in the comment section. That really does help me. I really hate being, I'm not a 22-year-old podcaster, YouTuber, trying to have click and subscribe and do all that stuff. This is kind of my vlog, if you will, a video log, video diary, a time capsule. I think that the times that we are in are designed for us to learn everything we can about the way that the world works, because the world is not working, and to be able to take this information and pass it on from generation to generation to generation so that other societies down the road never end up in these types of situations. That is so crucially important, and I think it's the entire purpose here. So that's why I do these videos, as opposed to writing a book or a Substack and trying to get money on clicks. It's just not what I do. I make my money outside of this stuff. This is a service that I try to provide and try to bring as much real information as I can to all of you. So I hope it helps, especially hope it helps with your friends and your family. As soon as we get through this election, I'm really excited for that. I've got a great slate of history to go through. There's so much history that is just hidden from us. History is always written by the winner. You'll be surprised to find out that when you actually research the other side of a story throughout history, that primarily the good guys haven't won a whole lot, and the bad guys have been telling us the story. So as soon as the election's over, we're going to get into some stuff on Antarctica. We're going to get on things on other continents, history, some really cool stuff. Quantum physics. I think quantum physics is a topic that most people don't cover because they don't know. I actually was in the quantum biology space for years. There's so much to learn about the subatomic structures and energy levels at the subatomic level that is just fascinating. That is the future of healing. That is the future of communications, of computing, of pretty much everything. So I want to get through the election season here and just kind of report what's happening, give you the ammunition you need to talk to your friends and family and try to snap this nation out of its slumber. I mean, we have really been in this slumber for a really, really long time. And it's fairly easy to determine who put us to sleep and who's trying to keep us asleep and why. So the liberation of the mind, the liberation of the soul is really important to me, and that's what I want to be able to get through. So we got about 3 more weeks of this grinding, grueling podcast of, money, politics, religion constantly. We're going to get much deeper into topics with a lot of interviews. I like to bring on people who are experts in their field so that I can question them, really dig into a topic, challenge their information, challenge my information. We should all want to be challenged on information. We don't know the truth in this world. One thing I can verify is we're not told the truth. And the less that we get of the truth, the harder it is to decipher. So we need to pull our resources and research together and get to a point where we can have open dialogues and openly disagree with each other and come to a conclusion that actually makes sense, and hopefully maybe one day have that information verified by government sources who actually know the truth and purposely leave it out of society so that we toil around in their lies and believe in them and are led astray. And this isn't just governments. This is the educational system. This is the pulpit. These are religions leading people in the wrong direction. So we're going to go through all that stuff as soon as we get out of the election, but I really focused on the election season. So now that we have some folks here and we're ready to go, let's get started. Thank you for coming today. My name is Eric Rice. This is the Rice Report. Thank you so much for being here. Anything you can do to help me share this out. I don't monetize it. I just want the word out there. I'm not trying to be famous. I could care less. Some people already know who I am. I got recognized a few weeks ago, which was kind of cool. Not what I do it for. Could care less. I actually never wanted to do this. I wanted to be in the back of the room, understanding what was happening and trying to help from behind the scenes. And thankfully, a lot of people urged me to get into this and try to make sense of this kooky world that we live in. So if you can, please share, subscribe, click, comment. I will respond to your comments unless you put like 92 of them in a row. I don't have that kind of time, but I do love you for doing that. So thank you. So anything you can do to help me make this thing grow, I can continue to do it more and more. It's a pretty thankless job when you don't get paid for it, but I love every second of it. All good things that you do are thankless. They just are. Been a CEO for years. You don't get a lot of thank yous. You get to provide jobs. You get to make a new industry. I've been a father for 15 years, and you get very few thank yous for that. All parents out there know that. It's the best job in the world. Ministering to people, I want to help them with their problems. Makes it difficult for us to get help with our own, but these thankless jobs out there, we call them thankless, and that sounds bad. I don't really want the thanks. I just want to help, and I want to be able to get information out to you guys. So let's get started with that today. We're going to cover some really specific topics today. I'm going to go through a lot of stats like I always do financially. I think maybe one of the biggest pressing issues out there is understanding this talk about tariffs. And I'm going to go through that first because most people will watch these videos for about 10 minutes. And actually, my numbers are a lot better than that. But that's thank you to all of you for that. The tariff situation, we're seeing this a lot. Trump was just at the Economic Club of Chicago being interviewed by a Brit, which made no sense. This is I'm from Chicago. There are British people who live in Chicago, but you couldn't find a Chicago native to interview Donald Trump. That was depressing to me. Nonetheless, he was at the Economic Club of Chicago talking in front of a bunch of business leaders, large business, small business, publicly traded, private companies, the whole gamut. And the opening questions were all about tariffs. So let me explain tariffs, because I don't think people know this. I think that the lack of financial education in a first world nation in this country is horrific. When I was a financial planner years and years ago, I used to always, lawyers call it pro bono work, so they get all this credit. But on my free time, I would go to schools or I would speak in front of groups of young people and teach them the basics about how to manage a checkbook, how to save your money. The basic financial information that we lack in this country is severe. The education level of what to do with your money is absolutely abhorrent to logic. I mean, we don't know enough as a society about money, and people don't talk about it. They've told you never talk about money with other people. You should. You should be helping one another to understand money and to understand how to use it, what its power is, how to save it, how to spend it. Because if we don't do that, we're always going to be at the whims of a government that currently is very tyrannical. So tariffs. A tariff is nothing more than a tax on imports. That's what a tariff is. Right now, our tariff structure, Trump was demonized for putting tariffs on Chinese products that had next to no tax on them for the better part of 3 decades. You got to remember, China was essentially a fourth world nation, beyond third world. They had people living in mud huts in China less than half a century ago. Now, through a bunch of corrupt globalists, they found this abundantly rich nation and resources. They corrupted their government. They brought in communism. Mao helped with all this. And along the way, these communists have become members of every other sitting parliament or Congress around the world. And they ended up putting them into the World Trade Organization. This was the first communist nation put into the World Trade Organization by our politicians, by American politicians. So these tariffs on China, what we've had now is a communist government who, speaking of just China, a communist government that uses slave labor or pays well below the standard of living to all of their blue-collar, work-with-your-hands people. We were using them for cheap products, right? That's what we see it as. But what we were really doing is filling the coffers of the Chinese Communist Party, who is raking in tremendous profits because they pay next to nothing for labor or materials. Most of the lithium comes from China. They're the world's largest gold miner. They have access to the most precious metals that are out there for building and construction and electronics. So these guys were vertically integrated by the U.S. government and blessed by the World Trade Organization for decades so that the elite of China could fill their coffers while they impoverished and communized every person in that country. That's just historically true. So when Trump came into office, he imposed tariffs on Chinese goods. And if you notice, the uproar back then in 2017 did not come from the Chinese government, did not come from the Chinese media. It came from the politicians who lined their pockets with their 10% for the big guy for all of their Chinese deals that come through. Tariffs are exactly how this country used to maintain its ability to not charge a federal income tax. In this country, most people don't realize before we installed a central bank, before we gave up our sovereignty of money to a private corporation headed by the Rothschild family, who might as well be the devil, before that happened, in this country, previous to 1913, there was no federal income tax. In fact, we are so cucked in this nation to taxation that we now don't even care that we're charged twice as much as the slaves in the Bible. The Pharaoh charged his slaves 20% tax. Those were slaves. These are people who are indentured servants who got a wage, but the Pharaoh taxed them 20%. We are now taxed 37% in the highest tax bracket, and no one says anything. This country was created on a tax revolt over the tax on tea. And now we are just a bunch of domesticated puppies that sit back and go, well, I guess they're just going to raise taxes again. The way that we got around this previous to having a central bank who controls all money supply and monetary policy, again, a private corporation that controls a nation's money supply, the way that we got around this was by charging tariffs. So, excuse me. So when we had to import things that we needed, like timber, which we didn't really need, but we imported it, we would put a tax on those imports. So the government would collect that tax from the tariff and use that money to operate the government. That's how governments are supposed to be run. But what we've done over the last century is we've created an entire media complex that brainwashes the United States population to believe that they're doing things that are good for us when they're absolutely not. So Trump is talking about tariffs. The mere fact that the left is actually engaging in this conversation gives you all the ammunition you need to justify that it's reasonable and fair and good. Because what they don't do is they don't talk about the triple beam effect. If you raise tariffs or taxation on imports, you generally lower taxes on your own population. So here's the way it works. The left is telling the truth when they say if you put tariffs on all imports coming into this country, the price of those goods will go up. That is absolutely true because there is now a tax to the vendor. So think of the way this works logistically. If I'm importing Chinese oven mitts, right? Whatever it is. So you're selling an oven mitt for $6.99 on Amazon, and currently you're paying $1 for an oven mitt. And now there's a 40% tariff on the oven mitt. It now costs you as an American company or vendor selling that oven mitt $1.40. So in business, the way it works, it's not philanthropy. So business is going to take that 40 cents on the oven mitt and they're going to add it to the price of the retail good. So they're going to go from $5.99 to $6.49. So absolutely 100% the press is telling the truth that if you raise tariffs on imports, that it will increase the cost of imported goods. That's true. What they're neglecting to say is the other part of the conversation that Trump is talking about with massive tax cuts for U.S. citizens. So look at it this way. If you're in, I'm just going to be general with this. If you make $100,000 a year, you're paying about 30% in taxes. That's $30,000 a year that the government is stealing from you unconstitutionally to pay a private bank so that your family now has less money to live on, which is why you need cheap foreign products so that you can afford them. I hope this is making sense so far. So when you put these two together, say we go from 30% to 10%. So now instead of having $70,000 left over in your own bank account at the end of the year after the government has charged you for the pleasure of breathing air in this country, now you, instead of having $70,000, you have $90,000. If you had an extra $20,000 in your bank account, would you give a crap about an extra 50 cents on an oven mitt from China? That's the real story that's not being told. They're telling the side of the story because you got to remember, your average conservative hates taxes. It's been this way forever. Almost every campaign I've seen in my 47 years on Earth has always been about politicians lowering taxes. But they've brainwashed this country so badly that people on the left think paying taxes is patriotic. They completely forgot the basis of this country and our tax revolt to become free people. But they do believe this. They actually believe that the money they're paying at the end of every pay period on their paycheck or at the end of every year, they actually believe that that money is going towards roads and schools, okay? It doesn't work that way, guys. There's federal and there's state income tax. They're two totally different things. Federal taxes, the purpose of them is supposed to be to fund the government, but of course we know that that's not true because they pass omnibus bills that are designed to print money to fund the government. So just look at things logically and critically. There is no way in the world that your money is funding the federal government. Otherwise, they wouldn't need omnibus bills. Or they're overspending and your taxes aren't good enough and they need more money. Either way, bad situation. That's your federal taxes. Unfortunately for us, our federal taxes go to pay back a central bank who lent fake money to put into circulation in this country that they control. They are debt notes. They are not dollars. They are debt instruments. And unfortunately, that's what happens. Your state income taxes actually pay for roads and schools. We've always had regional taxes. We've always had sales taxes. A government does have to run itself somehow, but a government doesn't need 40% of your income, 8.9% of every transaction, and 10, or if you're in California, 13% additional on your income. If you're in California right now and you make good money, which you're probably already thinking of leaving or you've already left, you actually pay close to 50% in your income as a W-2 with very few write-offs. By the way, employees, we have no write-offs. So as a W-2 in California, you're paying 50% of your income. That puts you 10% away from a socialist tax structure. And guess what? In a socialist tax structure, the way they've been selling this to us for about 4 decades is that they have free healthcare. It's the worst healthcare in the world. Ask any Canadian if they like their healthcare. It's terrible. So the way that they've sold this to us is that you have to pay your fair share. You know who invented the term fair share? Joseph Stalin and Leon Trotsky. They're the ones who started saying the wealthy need to pay their fair share, despite the fact that they were the wealthy who never paid their fair share. The brainwashing on taxation is so thick in this country, and it's only on one side. Yes, there are definitely conservative Republicans that are like, I don't mind paying taxes because it builds roads and does schools. The ignorance is one thing, stupidity is another. So I'm trying to cure ignorance. There is no cure for stupidity. The ignorance behind this is saying, well, I want to support our military. Why do we pass $7 billion to $700 billion to $1.5 trillion every year for military spending if they're paying for it with your income taxes? Use your head, people. This is extortion to the highest level. And these tariffs that Trump is talking about, if we actually taxed importation, number one, it would have to be hand in hand with a lowering of our taxes. So again, we would have more money and we could afford to pay more for foreign products. We would also be able to level the playing field for competition in this country. All those companies that you've seen, and you've all seen them in your life, those companies that you know and love who created a great product. I've owned a couple of these that created a product you absolutely love that went out of business. 9 out of 10 times they went out of business because their price couldn't compete with a foreign good. Period. They couldn't compete. We have much higher salaries, standard of living, cost of goods, rent, and taxes and regulation in this country than any other nation in the world. So the fact that the rest of the world thinks that we're rich, we actually kind of are. When you look at third and second world nations, we're very rich, but compared to other first world countries, Australia has a far higher savings rate, but they also live in communism. So there's trade-offs for all these things. And when we talk about tariffs, if they go hand in hand with a tax cut, they're a great thing. Now, if we just have tariffs, like the left is telling you in the media, just going to raise the cost of everything without lowering taxes, you need to fire Donald Trump if that's the case. But that's not what he said. His entire plan is to lower taxes, create tariffs, and eliminate government spending and waste. And I can tell you that this solution has been on the table since 1913, and this is the first politician in the history of this country since 1913 who's actually used this as a campaign promotion. So take it seriously. That is actually, this solution has been on the table for over 100 years, and not a single politician has ever even talked about it. Really think about that. So that tariff conversation that you probably have with friends and family, because the left will hear, oh, Donald Trump just wants to make it more expensive. They're only telling you one side of the story. And if that is the only side of the story, they're right. But it's not the only side of the story, and they're wrong. The other part that Trump did talk about in this interview, which is a very difficult interview, and he handled it masterfully, is the fact that once you put these tariffs on foreign countries, they'll open up manufacturing centers in the United States to save on that tariff, especially automakers, chip manufacturers, electronics manufacturers, and widget companies. They'll all open up a plant here, which what does that do? That creates more American jobs, that uses more of American real estate, that opens up new corporations in America, these subsidiaries that'll come from them. That's a whole new tax base that'll take burden off of the individual and place it on the companies. And it'll also create a fair competition ground for pure American-made companies. We have to be an American-first country. We have to understand that there is not a single foreign nation who gives a crap about what happens in this country. We are a piggy bank and a bully. Those are the two things that we've been throughout history. We're either a piggy bank or we're a bully. That's it. There's no one who wants to help us. However, they don't have a choice, because to date, and for a long time, in my opinion, we still have access to a global reserve currency. They must use our money. They must use our goods because we make the best products in the world. We have the highest standards of manufacturing, the highest standards of safety and protocols. So if we really want to make America strong, we have to explore the options that strengthen the whole. The middle, the lower, and the upper class must be strengthened. How do you do that? You lower tax burden. You allow them to have more money in their pocket so they can pay a little more for foreign products. After that kicks in, I guarantee you American companies will have the cheapest price. Now you'll be able to buy products that come from your backyard, your own neighborhood, your friends and family, the plant that your uncle works at, the place where your son started his career as a professional, making the products that you purchase. That's what a country is supposed to be. So yes, it'll bring foreign companies to America who have to hire American labor to make their products, American salespeople, American distributors. The entire supply chain gets strengthened by having more companies in this country, and the tax burden is relieved from the individual and placed upon these foreign corporations opening up American subsidiaries. That is such a strong political topic that is literally just being bastardized by the left, and it's time that someone actually explain this very simply. So I hope that that gives you an understanding about the tariff structure, what Trump's talking about, how tariffs work, how they would work hand in hand with lowered taxes. It's just such a brilliant, simple, and ready available solution for this country that no one has ever even brought up in a campaign. Why is it relevant? That's an important thing to think about. Why now? Well, there's an organization called the National Federation of Independent Business. This is a small business committee that provides support and services for startups and small businesses, but they also have their own index called an uncertainty index. So they survey tens of thousands of small business owners to find out how they're feeling about the economy. Right now, this uncertainty level is at 103. Okay, the way that this works is on a scale. So the higher the number is, the more uncertain small business owners are about their financial future. Small businesses employ about 68% of America. So you have the big mega corporations and the government, they employ about 32%. The rest of the people who are employed work for small and mid-sized businesses who take these surveys. They are now stating that they are more uncertain right now in this economy than they were in 2020. And I love to bring numbers back to 2020 and 2008. If you follow my show, that's what I look for. I look for correlations. I'm an economist. I look for historical correlations. When you have the largest indice for uncertainty, the only one that exists, who's surveying tens of thousands of people who run companies, normal people like you and I who run a business, who employ 5, 10, 20, 30 people, they're saying that they are more uncertain about their financial future and their ability not only to hire, but to retain the employees that they have. They are more uncertain right now than they were during a global pandemic, aka a black swan event. These are dire times in this country, and these are drastic measures to take, and they're so simple. Tariffs solve that problem, period. Game over. The game is over. You get rid of a banking cartel through tariffs immediately. You shut down the power of globalization and control of supply chains immediately, and you become a sovereign, solvent nation very quickly. Hats off to Donald Trump for that. Brilliant. It's important to know small business. I don't give a lot of statistics. I've been a small business owner for most of my adult life, and very few people give us credit for how difficult it is to start a business, to employ people, to maintain that employment, to continue to grow businesses, and if you're good enough, maybe sell them. But 8 out of 10 of them fail. So the risk takers in this country are uncertain, which means that they are very tight, and they are not taking any chances or gambling, which means they're not hiring your friends who just lost their job at a mega corporation from AI and robotics. This is something to really think about as a nation. So these mega corporations, the biggest mega corporation of our modern era is NVIDIA. NVIDIA right now, actually the market cap of NVIDIA is currently 11.7% of the total United States GDP. I'm going to repeat that. The market cap of one company is equivalent to 11.7% of the total GDP of this country. That is by definition a megacorp, and by law, a monopoly. Antitrust laws solve many problems and eliminate tyranny, period. Has happened this way for every year of modern economic existence. So one company, 11.7% of the total GDP, one company, one CEO cashing out $40 million a week right now in his own stock, $40 million a week. To give you an idea of where we are, in the dot-com bubble in 2001, Cisco was the NVIDIA of the time. So exact same metrics, exact same growth rate. Cisco back then was the NVIDIA of today. At their peak, Cisco accounted for 5.5% of the gross domestic product, the GDP. We are now looking at a corporation that's over 2 times that amount. So we have a much larger monopolistic economy and a much shakier economy than we've ever seen before. In fact, it's so shaky that Bank of America, who, by the way, Warren Buffett has pulled about $1 trillion out of Bank of America, they came out today, and this is a sneaky thing they did. They came out today and said that gold is the final safe haven for what may be coming due to global national debt. Sovereign bonds. I've been talking about the sovereign bond market for 2 years. Eventually, I'll be right. I don't know timing. I don't give timing, but I can tell you the sovereign bond market, which is the government bonds throughout the world, are as volatile as they've ever been based on a recent volatility index. By the way, volatility, I use that word. Remember the VIX I've been telling you guys about? Keep your eyes on the VIX, the VIX, or if you want to buy an ETF to participate, volatility is coming. That is apparent, that is obvious, it's logical, and it's something you can put a few bucks into and maybe make some extra money. Not financial advice. But when Bank of America is coming out and telling you gold is the final safe haven for the national debt crisis, we are in a debt crisis. The bubble has not bursted yet, but it will burst. Now they're coming out with this, coinciding with Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs came out today and they expect by June of 2025, they expect interest rates from the Federal Reserve to be 2 points lower. Not a bad expectation. We don't know what will happen. And the markets change every day. The Fed changes their mind every minute. So we don't know what's going to come. But if they're projecting lower interest rates, that's going to mean more money printing. Just keep that in mind. If you're new to finance, every time they lower interest rates, they make it cheaper for the government to borrow money, which means they print. So if we have a 2-point drop over the next 9 months, we're going to be looking at probably anywhere between $6 and $7 trillion that'll be printed and put into circulation, increasing inflation massively. Buy gold, buy silver, buy Bitcoin. Hedge your bet against volatility and inflation, because inflation is absolutely on the rise. In fact, food prices just came out. They went up 0.04% last week. That's the largest 1 week jump or 1 month jump since February of 2023. That's a holistic approach to all food, okay? The way that the food price index is created is also a rigged system. There's so many lies we're going to uncover in this episode. One of them is that they are not putting processed food and real food in the same, or they are putting them in the same category. There's a big difference between the cost of a steak and the cost of a pack of Skittles. Skittles is chemicals, sugar, and garbage swirled into one thing. It's not even food. You get it. It's very cheap to manufacture, very cheap to buy. Cattle requires raising a live animal, feeding it, treating it, making sure it's healthy, butchering it, shipping it off, freezing it. So there's a lot of things in that process that make real food more expensive. And what is happening is that fake food is bringing down the inflation of real food. Hope you're following me with this. Fake food's going to kill you. That is proven. One thing I saw the other day, I used to love the candy Nerds. It was like my favorite candy. In fact, maybe I'll tell you a story one time about a strange coincidence with that. But I used to love Nerds until about 2 weeks ago when I realized that Red 4, which is an artificial dye, food coloring, is actually made from crushed up parasites. So you're actually eating parasites in these fake foods. So fake food, they want to make it cheap, so you buy fake food so that you're always sick and you need doctor care, you need hospital care, eventually you need hospice care and a funeral service. But along the way, you're going to have to pay for a lot of pharmaceuticals, treatment, and all that kind of stuff. It is rigged that way. So fake food is bringing down the overall cost of real food, making inflation in food look like it's no big deal. Oh, 0.04%, no big deal. Let's look at real food. Meats, poultry, and eggs have doubled in inflation rate. They're at 0.8%. If you really break this down, eggs in 1 month jumped 8.4%. Thankfully, I had a friend of mine drop by today, thank you, Derek, and dropped off 4 dozen eggs from his farm out of the kindness of his heart. Had 3 of them for dinner with my steak tonight. Best eggs I've ever had. Thank you for that. 22.5% is the overall inflation rate from 2021 to today just in food. And I'm going to remind you to learn how to see through the BS that they give you and think critically about these things. Fake food, which is now about 75% of what people consume and purchase, is dragging down the true inflationary number of real food. Real food is medicine. Fake food is poison. It's just that simple. So that's being manufactured. Mortgages. Mortgage applications dropped 17% last month. 17%. That is the largest number of mortgage application drop since April of 2020. Again, in the middle of a pandemic, black swan event. Now, yes, properties were moving. I was in Los Angeles. I was in Southern California. I was astounded after the economy shut down how many homes were moving off the market in 3, 4, 5 days at $100,000, $200,000 premium. Back then, as part of my awakening process, because I started looking at title searches, most of those purchases were either made in cash from a corporation like a BlackRock, a Blackstone, or they were being purchased in cash by foreign entities, primarily Chinese companies, buying the real estate of people who couldn't work, who couldn't afford their mortgage anymore. So they did pay them a nice premium, but a lot of those people are still renting. So mortgage applications are down 17% in the last month, lowest number or biggest drop since April of 2020. All the while all this stuff is happening financially, we sent another $425 million to Ukraine. I'm going to tell you 2 videos I saw in Ukraine today were basically a brawl and a fist fight in a Christian Orthodox church in Ukraine. They have basically made Christianity illegal, and we're funding the nation that is making Christianity illegal. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Everyone talks about the persecution of the Jews, the persecution of the Muslims. No one talks about the persecution of Christians who are actually going through a massive persecution on planet Earth. And Ukraine is one of those nations that's one of the main perpetrators. They have literally arrested priests and pastors, put them in jail for spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we just gave that country another $425 million. Now, an interesting tidbit of information. A gentleman named Eric Council Jr., 25 years old, out of Athens, Alabama, was just charged by the SEC for financially rigging and hacking the Twitter X account the day before the ETFs were announced for Bitcoin. By the way, the Bitcoin ETFs are the fastest growing ETFs in history. They have the largest inflows in history for the last previous to today, the 2 days previous this week. So it's Thursday, so Wednesday and Tuesday, they averaged $2.1 billion going into these Bitcoin ETFs. Eric Trump is speaking at a conference. He was quoted at saying that Bitcoin is the future of finance. I'm not telling people to be a maxi and put all their money into Bitcoin, but you need to have some. Gold, silver, Bitcoin, raw land, oil and gas, trade the VIX. I'm going to repeat this over and over again because that's my portfolio mix. Whatever you do with your money is what you do with your money. I'm not here to pitch you on anything or persuade you into anything. I'm just telling you from everything that I see, that's the only places that I'll put my money. But he was just charged for hacking the X account of the SEC and saying a Bitcoin ETF had been approved. Now, this is interesting to me because you should never do that. That is market manipulation. So the price of Bitcoin did go up $1,000, which somebody put in my chat on Telegram today. That happens when people sneeze. You're totally right. But the real problem here is understanding where do I put money in? What do I do? There's another crap coin, for lack of a better term, out there that tells people all the time that they have these tremendous banking relationships that no one can validate or prove. They're just blog posts. They actually posted, there was somebody who posted 3 different times that this particular altcoin that I won't mention because I don't feel like dealing with the lunatics that support it. They actually have put out 4 different false postings about an ETF for their altcoin. And not a thing has happened to them. Put those 2 together and see what you think makes sense. On top of this, we have the GDP report coming out October 30th. So the day before Halloween, we are going to get the latest GDP, the last GDP report before an election. Now, the last time this happened was in 2022 during the midterms, and everyone was expecting a 0. We just had 2 consecutive quarters. We were approaching the definition of a recession. We were actually in a recession. We're still in a recession, but the GDP report before the midterm elections miraculously showed 2.7 or 2.8% growth rate, when everyone in this country knew in 2022 that the economy was not growing at any percentage, yet alone 2.2. Back then, when the report came out, I broke it down. You could look at the 3 main factors that created this false GDP report, because again, over 50% of all commerce in this country is tied to government spending, which is called socialism in every definition that's ever been created. Now, in this past GDP report in 2022, before an election, we were restricting the ability of American natural gas providers to use liquid natural gas export portals or terminals, shutting them down, blowing them up, whatever you want to call it. Maybe they were an accident, maybe they weren't. I find it hard to believe that a $13 billion facility just blows up when there's no volatile chemicals in there. But what the government was doing, because they own and control the exportation at this point in time, they were harvesting all American natural gas at $2, and they were shipping it overseas and selling it in Europe for $28 to $30 a unit, and then calling that profit part of the GDP and telling us what a great job they did as an economy, despite the fact that almost no oil and gas provider in this country grew at any sort of rate. And then you add in the weapons sales overseas. They doctor these things. So I'm expecting them to doctor this GDP through military replacement. All this money we haven't sent money. Like, we're not sending a lot of cash to Ukraine. And we are sending a ton of cash. Let me rephrase that. We're not sending an obnoxious amount of actual cash to Ukraine, Israel, or any of these. We funded Lebanon too, right? So we give Israel money to kill people in Lebanon. Then we support Lebanon. We actually just gave safe harbor in America, special citizen status to Lebanese refugees. You see how this works yet? You fund a country, they blow up the country, the people in that country know that American weapons were used. Then we create a refugee channel to get these people who now currently hate us. We put them in this country, we give them free money, we give them special status, and then we wonder why our citizenry is confused. We wonder why we have no culture. We wonder why we hear 15 different languages at every mall that we go to. We wonder, right? This is all being orchestrated, all of it. Everything in this world is designed to manufacture your consent for continued corruption. I'll get off my soapbox for a moment. So this GDP report, I fully expect them to be able to basically tell us that the economy is growing in an incredible manner, but the only way that it's growing is for the 5 major defense stocks who are now replacing the equipment we've sent over to Ukraine and Israel. When you send equipment, you have to replace the equipment for the military. So you send them your old or current stuff, get it off the books, call it a write-off, whatever they're going to, I don't know if they tax themselves, whatever, they're going to write it off. But eventually they're going to print more money and pay American contractors to create new planes, tanks, ammunition, guns, goggles, vests, full kits, helmets. They're going to do all that stuff at a massive premium. You know, most of these defense contracts, it cost about $12 for a Bic pen that you buy for 39 cents at the store. So they're going to rig the system by bolstering the defense stocks while they're shipping off all of our equipment to overseas so that we can have more refugees who hate us that get into this country and get free things. That's what's going to happen on the GDP. I'd guarantee it, but I can't guarantee anything this government does. But I'll tell you that my hunch on this is about as strong as any hunch will ever be, and we'll see what happens on October 30th. Now, in the midst of all this, the IRS has actually gotten approval from the Supreme Court. The approval is that they are now allowed, without authorization, to examine the bank accounts of people who live or work or associated closely with you if you owe taxes. I didn't stumble. I didn't stutter. The Supreme Court just gave the IRS full permission. So say you don't pay your taxes and you're married, or you have a father, you have a sister, and they know that you know each other, right? Because you're related. Here's what's going to happen. You don't pay your taxes. Now the IRS can not only go into your bank account, they can go into your sister's bank account, your spouse's bank account, your father's bank account, and they can examine the activity to find out if you don't pay, they'll take money from them. Does that sound like a free country? Again, I'll talk about taxes all day long. I've been hounded by the IRS since Barack Obama got into office. Why? Because at the time I was a Republican. I am now an independent, and I will always be an independent. There's a reason they call it right wing, left wing, because there's one bird. And back then I was a white registered Republican business owner, and I was audited and pressured and overtaxed and had write-offs eliminated for 8 consecutive years, and it hasn't really stopped. So I've been fighting the IRS just like the Boston Tea Party for the better part of 15 years. That's why I have a few gray hairs. But at the same time, yeah, this is just going to get worse. When the IRS can look into your spouse, your friend, or your business partner's bank account because you didn't pay taxes, tells you that you are a cattle on a tax farm. Period. That is what America is today, and that's why tariffs are so important. Lower taxes, eliminate tax burden from citizens, because you shouldn't be paying taxes to pay back an illegal private corporation that manages our money supply. Period. End of story. But the IRS now has given absolute authority to look into any third party associated with you if you owe taxes. So if you're watching this show, you may get the IRS maybe looking into your bank account since you watch my show. Some other silly news before we get into politics and religion. Yale, if you haven't figured out, the Ivy League is nothing more than a breeding ground for propaganda. Yale just wrote an opinion piece, I think it was in the New York Times, basically telling you that if you do not get your COVID-19 booster shot, it's going to lower your IQ. I also didn't stutter that. A recent article, an opinion article written by Yale University says that if you don't get your COVID booster, it's going to lower your IQ. That actually may be true. If you believe that not getting your booster shot will lower your IQ is probably already as low as it will ever be. So go ahead and get the booster. It's the way I look at it. It's just kind of funny. They're also promoting another solar flare, guys. It's coming for you. Remember the last solar flare? It took out Verizon. I think it was Verizon or T-Mobile. I think it took out Verizon for like 8 hours. Solar flares are EMPs. These are electromagnetic pulses that theoretically come from a place called space. And when these EMPs hit the Earth, this electromagnetic field is so strong that it knocks out electronics. That's the science behind it. Now, when this happens, these EMFs and EMPs, they don't come in like a siloed sniper shot into one location. If there was actually a solar flare from the sun, it would have taken out every cell phone provider, not just one. But they're saying it's going to happen again. Apparently, God has a laser scope and a sniper rifle where his next solar flare from the sun is just going to take out the internet. So they're preparing you for an internet blackout while we're going through an election. Just pay attention to what they're saying. A solar flare, it's not going to take out your power grid. It's not going to shut down the circuit breakers in your house, and it's certainly not going to stop your car. It's just going to take out the internet. It's not a cyber attack. It's a solar flare. It's a highly targeted, highly potent solar flare that's just going to take out the internet. I laugh because this stuff is funny. Like, scientifically, it doesn't make any sense. So why would we buy into this stupid stuff? Anyways, let's move into politics. Before I do that, again, going to have somebody on Monday from North Carolina to give us the scoop firsthand, what's happening with FEMA. Samaritan's Purse is helping a ton of people out there. I can tell you that for sure. I actually know people who are working for Samaritan's Purse. They're working around the clock, doing a good job. It's sad when a nonprofit is doing what a government should do with $20 billion in funding. But North Carolina, let's really put this together before we wrap up finances. Let's put together what just happened in North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Those are the major states impacted by Helene and Milton. Most people don't put this stuff together, okay? These are mountain regions, okay, primarily in North Carolina. These are good folks. I know a lot of people out. These are some of the best people you'll ever meet. They'll give you the shirt off their back. They will absolutely go the extra mile for you. They're living in crisis. But let's look beyond that, and I hate to do that because nothing is more important than the human aspect of things, but let's look at it financially. We just had a major bridge for commerce taken out in Baltimore by a seafaring vessel that miraculously took a 90-degree turn and took out the only load-bearing beam on the bridge, dropped it immediately. That's not going to be up for another 3 years. Now we had to find a logistics route to bring new items onto the mainland. We just had this happen in mass in 5 states. There are huge manufacturing facilities in North Carolina and Tennessee. Those manufacturing plants aren't working. Kids aren't going to school. There's many things that aren't happening. Supply chains are going to get tighter because of those storms. Prices are going to go higher because of those storms. People are suffering because of those storms. And they keep taking down my weather modification videos on TikTok. Does that tell you what you need to know? So really think about the effects of the supply chain that will come from 5 states who are heavy in manufacturing. There's tons of manufacturing in Georgia and the Carolinas and Tennessee, tons of it. You also have a lot of goods and services and citrus fruits that come out of Florida that now need to find new routes. These routes are very difficult to find because every one of them involves a logistics company. People I know in logistics had a conversation today. They're working around the clock to figure out a new way to get you the things that you're used to having with ease and comfort. Discomfort, higher prices, and supply chains will come simply from this natural disaster and what it's knocking out and removing from our own ease and comfort in our life. So let's get into politics. Now, recently, there was a report a few days ago that the federal government gave the military full authorization to use force on U.S. civilians when they're supporting the police and all these other things. I've read through it. Everyone keeps saying, well, we signed Chevron deference, and that doesn't matter anymore because they're 3-letter agencies. Guess what, guys? This administration does not care about laws or Supreme Court rulings at all. In fact, they just got the Supreme Court to give access to your friends' and family's bank accounts if you don't pay your taxes. This is tyranny. We live in tyranny. Tyranny does not care about laws. They do not care about rules. So a lot of people are saying, well, it doesn't matter because we have the Posse Comitatus Act, which restricts their ability to use force on U.S. citizens. Listen, throw it all out the window. Okay, there's a lot of people worried about this online. Either they will or they won't. But what I can tell you, I have hundreds of friends who are military. I have plenty of friends who are active military, and I have a lot of them that are veterans. What I can tell you about our military is these are also some of the best people in this country. Yes, there are definitely some psychopaths. There's psychopaths in everything. The majority of our military, even if they're given orders, will not use force upon you. If anything, they might turn that around on the one giving the order. So there's a lot of things put out there to scare us. This is part of how you mind control a nation. You provide fear. People who are in fear are easy to control. Don't be easy to control by not having fear of things that don't impact you yet. If our military was given orders to use force upon us, I doubt that they would do it. They're our friends and relatives. And that's the hope and faith that I'll place in the men in uniform because I know so many of them, and I highly doubt, even if given orders, that they will ever use their firearms on American citizens. But it's certainly a topic online that a lot of people are worried about and discussing. I don't have all the answers. I'm not a policy expert, nor am I a lawyer, nor am I military. But what I can tell you is that there's a lot you're going to worry about there that we just don't know yet. It's not worth worrying about until it becomes something to worry about. What I would worry about in the process is the lies that are occurring. I just gave a presentation at an oil and gas company today about economics, and I explained to them the economics are simple. When the government's telling you that we are producing X amount of barrels of oil, which is the most oil we've ever produced, it's a lie, and it's easy to prove. An oil and gas company can get a rig for a new well in less than 2 weeks. When I was in oil and gas, when we were really drilling oil, it would take 3 or 4 months because there's only a certain amount of rigs. Everyone rents them. All the companies that rent them are BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street owned. They increased the prices during 2022 massively, causing a loss of profit. But what I can tell you is it's impossible for us to be producing that much oil when we don't have more rigs, and rigs are easy to get. If rigs are easy to get, it means they're not in use and they're ready available. So they lied about that number. They've lied about the jobs report. They've lied about inflation. They've lied on the GDP. Now they're being caught lying about crime statistics. The FBI just redid their crime statistics for the year 2022. They told us crime increased 2.1%, revised it just like they do the jobs report and everything else. And now that crime statistic for 22 is actually 4.5%, with the largest increases in violent crimes, murders, aggravated assault, aggravated theft, use of firearms. The world is much more dangerous in your neighborhood than you're being told, and your left-wing friends who believe what they're told by the government have no idea how much danger they're actually in. Not to scare you, it's to prepare you. Be prepared. The crime is worse than they've told us. We knew that, but now it's proven, and I still don't believe these numbers. I still think they're higher than that because these guys have jobs to keep. So even though they're finally telling the truth, there's probably still some lies in that truth. But it's important to note. Kamala Harris just did an interview with Bret Baier, who did a good job. I'm not going to waste too much. Everyone watched this. Everyone knows it. The things that I think to take away from that interview, number one, finally, Bret Baier actually grew a pair. We can call him Bret Pair now because he grew a pair. Asked some tough questions. She fumbled every one of them. It was literally a terrible interview. I think she said Trump's name 57 times. The interview was for her to persuade conservative voters to vote for her. And what she ended up doing was creating more Trump voters or solidifying Trump's vote. So take that for what it's worth. It's insulting what's happening in the black community. It's insulting what's happening. I mean, white people are demonized in this country. That's obvious. Christians are demonized, and black people have always been demonized. I don't know why black and white have any friction at all. We're going through the same stuff. But the insults from this campaign, when she found out that her black voter numbers were so low, she had Barack Obama, who's not actually American, actually Muammar Gaddafi, and if you look at his translated speeches, called Obama a son of Africa in 2009, which is one of the reasons he's dead now. But Barack Obama went out to the black population and basically said what Joe Biden said: if you don't vote for her, you ain't black. What's awesome to watch with this is identity politics are going out the window. Martin Luther King said it best: it's not the color of your skin, it's the content of your character. And people are getting back to the content of a character. And we can see more content of character in Donald Trump than we've ever seen in Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or any of these jokers. But the biggest insult is her black voter among black men. Black men are voting for Donald Trump. Like I'm a man. We're all men. Doesn't matter what color skin you are. We're all men. We want another man leading the country. If they're going to be a man, act like a man. This toxic masculinity thing is a communist tactic to make us weak so they can overrun us. Men are becoming men again, and we want a strong leader in a difficult time. So it doesn't matter what color you are. Men are going to vote for Donald Trump because he's a real man. He's actually out there taking on challenges, being brave. But what is her response to her poor numbers? Let's give them free money and weed. I mean, what an insult. What an absolute insult, man. There's nothing more insulting than that to me. 20,000 here for black entrepreneurs, 50,000 for this. What does it matter what color you are? You're an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur. You're an American. I'm American. Doesn't matter what color of skin. If we don't get out of this ideology of skin color and ethnicity, it's belief structures and actions and behaviors that actually matter, not the color of your skin or the neighborhood you came from. But the insult is, well, I need their vote, so let's give them free money and drugs. That's what she thinks of your community, period. So I hope her numbers get destroyed for the insult to our fellow countrymen who happen to be of darker pigmentation than I am. They're still human beings. They're Americans. They don't care about free weed. They'll buy it on their own, lower their taxes. They buy it on their own. Give everyone opportunities. Give us all opportunities to start a business. We don't need your free money. America is not a place that was taking government handouts. In fact, this country was created by not taking government handouts. And people are tired of government handouts, especially that community, and you've insulted them. So I hope it's the end of the Democratic Party and the plantation they've created for these folks, because we need them on the American side. There's Americans and communists. We need them off the communist plantation, back on the American plantation, and we will create a country that you've never seen before. And I'm so happy to see her stupidity turning things around. Her interview is funny. I will say that. Candace Owen just exposed that her grandmother is actually not black, that she's Irish. You really can't make this up. Now the Democratic Party is so desperate that they are now entering into a whole new phase of election interference. There are 100 members of the Labour Party in Great Britain that are going to battleground states in America to campaign for Kamala Harris. I said it correctly. There are 100 members of the Labour Party, the Liberal Party who has destroyed the UK, destroyed Great Britain. They are now coming to battleground states to campaign for another one thing about communists you have to give them, they stay together. Communists bond together, man. They will toe that party line to death. They will actually interfere in another country and go to rural America and these battleground states with their English accents and expect that to sway the vote. Good luck, guys. Good luck. Kamala Harris was actually on another interview today and said that people in rural neighborhoods, they don't need voter ID. People who live in rural areas, they don't even have access to FedEx. They don't even know how to use a photocopier. I got news for you, Kamala Harris. Hank Williams Jr. wrote a great song, my favorite country song, called "A Country Boy Can Survive." And I can tell you, these people who live in rural areas, they grow their own eggs. They plow their own fields. They get their own beef. They could literally take household goods and build a 5G tower for you in 15 minutes. You think they can't photocopy an ID? You've insulted black people enough, all the Democratic Party, by saying, well, black people are too poor to get a driver's license. Really? They don't have $65? Really? And yet you give them, but now you're giving them free money and weed, so now they can get that driver's license, right? I mean, do you see how dumb this is? Use this information against your liberal friends. Hopefully wake them up and get them out of this slumber we're in. It's really, it's entertaining to me at this point. Maybe it's not to you. I find it funny. The FEC, this is your election committee. This violates every FEC law in the world, and thank God for people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like her or not. It doesn't matter to me. She speaks her mind, and she is bold in what she said. She put this out immediately. Facebook has already begun censoring anything anti-Harris. This was an undercover video by James O'Keefe from a Facebook official telling you anything anti-Harris is going to be definitely shadow banned on Facebook moving forward. Meta, whatever stupid name they have, Facebook. I don't know. Nobody cares about it anymore. But now they're going to be banning you and censoring you again. All the while this is happening, Trump's transition team, who I trust about half of, like maybe, but his transition team is already building a blacklist for people who should never work in the government again. That's awesome. But here's the big news. Here's the big news in politics, okay? Forget about the Harris interview. Forget about Barack Obama, talking down to black. Forget about all that stuff. The most important thing in the political arena right now happened in a courtroom. A few days ago, 5 appellate judges actually overturned the 34 felonies and $450 million fine that was given to Trump for a absolutely crooked lawsuit for him saying that he improperly valued Mar-a-Lago at $18 million. If Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million, I'll rob, steal, and kill to go buy 3 of them. Okay, I've been to Mar-a-Lago. It's beautiful. That's probably a $1 billion property in its location. So every liberal who keeps saying, well, he's a felon, he has 34 count. He doesn't have 34 count felonies anymore. That was overturned 5-0 by appellate judges. 5-0. There was not one dissenting judge. They all said this court case was corrupt, and every one of them, it was so bad that at the end of this hearing, the attorneys for this lawsuit asked the judge to not sanction them. That is corruption at the highest level in the legal system. This is lawfare, and it was just overturned 5-0. You can take this video and share it with them. You can look it up online. It still hasn't been on CNBC. It still hasn't been on MSNBC. Why are they hiding from you that this felon they keep telling you is a felon actually isn't a felon anymore? That happened right before an election. You want your October surprises? That's certainly one of them. So pay attention to that. Along with this, we have a few more things here. North Korea, South Korea is heating up. North Korea destroyed a railway in between both of those two nations, which actually goes into most of mainland Asia. There is a conflict brewing over there because when you have no power or no masculinity in offices, then other people with masculinity and devious intentions will begin to start wars because there's no one here to stop them. So North Korea, South Korea is heating up. There were 137 Chinese fighter pilots that circled the island of Taiwan. They actually did a military drill with boats and planes, creating a perfect perimeter around the island. So I expect that to be invaded or at least threatened in the near future. I don't know what near future means either. Sometime in the near future, I expect a conflict between China and Taiwan and ultimately another conflict between North and South Korea. I think those are foregone conclusions. Now, a little bit of information from my neighborhood. I think it's important to be local. I love local information. If you have local information, share it in the comments. Come to my Telegram, Twitter, hit me up on a DM. I've been doing this a long time. I don't care what the news says. I don't even care what half of the independent journalists out there are paid by the same people who pay the mainstream media. They just pretend to be independent journalists. Local information is everything. In my hometown, a very good friend of my daughter has recently had 2 seizures. I thought that was very strange. She's a cheerleader and gymnastics and super healthy, bubbly, beautiful, awesome girl. We don't know what's wrong with her. They're assuming it's meningitis, but they don't really know. Another girl in my son's high school died of a seizure. These are 2 very young people having seizures. We've seen 3 instances of cardiac arrest. I'm not going to sit here and claim to know it, but I think it might have something to do with something like this that children were getting a long time ago, that there are now hundreds and hundreds of commercials promoting to get another one of those things for your kids. Don't get one of those things for your kids. It's not getting that's going to lower your IQ. It's the fluoride in the water. They just proved that. It is lowering your child's IQ. Your child's IQ will accelerate massively if they're allowed to eat real food and be real kids. We also had our town purchased an $800,000 military vehicle last year. And in the past 2 months, they've done 2 police training drills by blowing up abandoned homes. I don't know what to make of it either. I know that the town next to me, right next to me, the very next town, just created its own SWAT team that required all the medics to actually have combat experience. So, you can't look at these things and you say it's weird, right? There's a house they just blew up, surrounded by cops. They were training. Why are our cops training for houses blowing up? Why is small town Texas buying $800,000 military Hellcat vehicles that are bullet and IED proof? Why is the town over from us creating a whole new SWAT unit with combat ready medics? Why are kids having seizures and dying in their teens? Why are they having cardiac arrest? I want this local information because we deserve the truth, and the best truth in the world is the truth you see with your own eyes. I've talked about this. I go running in my neighborhood, and I run around this little fishing pond that we have right across the street. We have 6 of them in our neighborhood. They're gorgeous. We love them. You can fish there. It's catch and release. On my run on Saturday, I saw 5 people that don't look them. I can't prove that they're illegal. I know that none of them were speaking English because I drove by them and I heard a language I was unfamiliar with. But in a catch and release pond that's literally the size of an infield of a baseball park, not a big pond, they had coolers and nets. I like to fish. People with coolers and nets, they're not doing that for catch and release. They're looking for dinner. So I brought this up at my daughter's football game. She's a cheerleader for a 6th grade football team. Brought it up to some parents, and ironically, 2 of the parents, one of them being my wife, who didn't tell me this, they're putting posters up at the new apartment complexes they've built, which are low-income apartment complexes. Drove by one of them. Again, can't prove anything. It's none of my business. It kind of is our business. We need to stop saying that. I didn't notice a whole lot of American-looking people in these complexes, and they're putting up posters around that complex saying it's perfectly okay for you to go fish in our private property, and now apparently it's okay for you to take our fish and eat them. The story is not about fish. It's not about fishermen, and it's not about nets and coolers. There are people in this country, we don't know what they're here for. And we know that in places like Ohio, there are people who are stealing pets and eating them. Now, I can tell you, I don't know if they're legal or illegal. It's not my job to card them. And to be frank with you, I was running. I wanted to go get my exercise. But what I can tell you is I assume, and I have a very good judge of these things because I've been around the block or two, that these were not Americans that were fishing for dinner in a private property in a private neighborhood with a catch and release pond. So you think these things won't come to your doorstep. You really don't, but they're already there. It's already there. This country's already in that position. Now, in the middle of all this, it's our local information. There's a piece of information I want to end on today. Beverlyn Williams, a name you've never heard before, probably, unless you're really paying attention to the news. Beverlyn Williams was protesting in the year 2020 in front of a Planned Parenthood facility for pro-life, against abortion. She was arrested. She's a mother. She has a family. She was arrested. She had to go through 4 years of court trials. She was found guilty by the Department of Justice and is now serving 3.5 years in prison away from her family for protesting for pro-life. These are real things that are happening. Can you connect those dots? I can. They're pretty simple. You protest for life, you go to jail. You raise, if I see these people near my pond again, I absolutely guarantee you that I'll be on patrol and figure out who they are. Nobody here did anything about it. Nobody's going over to the apartment complex and telling migrants not to fish in our pond. They have more rights than you do. Illegals have more rights than you do. People who kill babies have more rights than you do. People who lop off their genitals have more rights than you do, and they're demanding more. People who maybe will never pay taxes that aren't even here legally have more rights than you do. In fact, if you don't pay your taxes for those people to be here illegally for whatever purpose they may have while they're stealing your fish and killing your pets, you have so little rights right now, it's unbelievable. Not only are your rights being violated, the IRS can now go into the bank accounts of your relatives to make sure that they get the money to pay for those illegal people. That they get the money to be able to prosecute a mother for protesting pro-life. I'm tired of hearing about abortion. I'm tired of it. We're the only nation in the world that spends billions of dollars a year for campaigns to convince you that killing babies is reproductive health. I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the demonic nature of this country. I'm tired of the lack of faith in God. I'm tired of Christians being persecuted. And I'm tired of mothers going to jail for protesting to be a mother. You know, we just had Bill Clinton on a town hall at a farm trying to pretend like he's a down-home good old boy who just admitted that people wouldn't be dying if we vetted these migrants. And then he admitted in the same breath that we need them to work here. The Democrats don't see this as a country. They see this as a corporation, because by contract it has been. They see this as a pathway to profits, which is exactly what they do. They profit from you killing your babies and sacrificing that soul to Moloch, which is exactly what you're doing. It's written about in the Bible multiple times. They make their money off of your skin, your sweat, your labor. They steal it from you every chance they get. They raise the price of the things that you need. It's time for change in this country, and it doesn't come from the government. I don't care who we elect. Unless we're electing Jesus Christ himself, one man is not going to change this country. We are going to change this country by changing the trajectory of society. We are in the midst of a communist takeover which follows a 4-point plan: demoralize, destabilize, create a crisis, and normalize dystopia. That's how it works. What does a demoralized society look like? I don't know. Hookup culture, teen sex, underage drinking, forced vaccinations, abortion, horrible curse word language, terrible music, sinful media, lies, propagandas being accepted by all. I mean, I can go on for hours. We are a demoralized society. We are being financially destabilized. And ultimately, we will see a financial crisis and perhaps an actual real crisis, which in the end they will use to normalize the dystopia they've created. That is the reality, the sad reality of America today, and no government and no politician is ever going to change that. Who's going to change that is you and I. We've got to become better fathers, better mothers, better children, better siblings, better friends, better neighbors. We've got to work harder. We've got to live more purely. We've got to give praise, honor, and glory to God who created us for a time such as this. To be here right now to make an impact. You think your voice isn't heard? Because a million people don't listen to me either. Nobody cares who I am. You just got to try. You just got to talk to that next person. You got to share the truth with them. You got to share love with them. Truth without grace does nothing. Grace is the word that is missing. We become so militant and pig-headed over our own ideas and ideologies that we try to force them upon other people. That's what communists do. And we all do it. I do it. We all do it. We all look at someone doing something we don't agree with. Oh, you're doing it wrong. Truth without grace is ineffective. We have to start giving grace to people. If you're listening to this show, if you're on here right now, if you're watching a recording, I'm probably going to assume you're here for one of two reasons. Most of you are here because you're like-minded. Some of you are here because you're curious, and a few of you are here because you just hate me. All of those three things are great. They're great. I love all of you. Just because I don't agree with your ideologies doesn't mean I don't love you. Just because I disagree with the fact that you think abortion is a good thing, and it doesn't mean anything against you. It wasn't your fault that you believe this nonsense. Never before has a civilization killed babies so you could have sex the next day, or go drinking, or have a career and work behind a screen for 35 years and do nothing. I'm a parent. The greatest thing that I've ever done in this life is raise children. I've done some pretty amazing things. I've had a pretty good life. God has blessed me with a lot of experiences with a lot of people, and there's absolutely nothing I've done more rewarding than have children. If we don't continue to make Americans and raise good children, this country is done for. This election, super important. The economy, extremely important. There's nothing more important than raising in the next generation of wonderful Americans who live by the original mantra of this country: God, family, country. Those morals need to be installed of the young people around this country more than ever. That exact order: God, family, country. Everything else comes after that. There's so much comfort. We've been given so much comfort. 100 years ago, if we wanted a hamburger, we had to know a farmer. Now we just go to a store. If we wanted a new shirt, we might have to make it ourselves. Now we just buy it and we throw them away. These comforts have cost us our freedom. It's time to get uncomfortable. It's time to have uncomfortable conversations with people. It's time to have tough conversations with people on many topics. That's how I want to end this show today. This time in history couldn't be more important. Most people watch this because they like my financial opinions, and I praise God that so many of you have gotten back to me and said, "Man, I followed what you said. I did this, I did that, and now I have this. I have these returns, and it's great. It's amazing. It's why I do it. I could easily sit in a room somewhere and do this on my own and be selfish. But it's not the purpose. It's not why I do this. It's not why I'm sitting here right now, not with my children who I love. I'm sitting here because I want to have a future for them. That doesn't mean a college education and a BS job that's never going to provide them any real substance in their life. I want to have a country that supports them, that sees them as a fellow countryman, a fellow American, that'll give them the shirt off their back. And we just don't talk about these things enough in society. We just don't. Everything is my way or the highway, this type A personality. I'm a type A personality. I've learned to be different. We can all learn. We can all learn to be better communicators. We can all learn to be more empathetic. But what we can't learn to do more is love our country, love our children, love God, praise God. Unless we get back to those simple morals and those simple values, this country is going to continue on a downward slide regardless of who's in office. It's going to happen into infinity. The great abyss. The one place that every author and filmmaker has feared their entire life is the great abyss, the great emptiness. It's time for us as an American people to put down our differences, to love the person across the table from you, even if they believe in exactly the opposite things that you do. That's just their belief system today. They didn't always believe that. I find it hard to believe that from birth, any human being believes in killing babies. I find it almost impossible to think that human beings are that cruel. I find it almost impossible to believe that anyone actually thinks legalizing hard drugs in this country is going to provide benefit and value at their core. I find it impossible to believe that any society in the world would tolerate pedophilia to a point where they now call them minor attracted persons and label them as a gender. These are absolute psychological operations contorting the moral value of a society, creating a demoralized society that ultimately will be conquered unless it's strengthened. Trump's great. I'm voting for Trump. I've never made any bones about that. There's nobody else to vote for. But what I'm really voting for this election season is all of you. To step up your game, to be a better neighbor, better friend, to talk to people openly and honestly, and to try to have an impact. You're not going to change someone's mind in 5 minutes, but you can plant a seed and harvest a crop later. And you're going to do that with truth and grace. So until next time, I'm Eric Rice. This is the Rice Report. Thank you so much for coming here tonight. May God bless you and your families. May God bless this country. And we'll see you next time. Have a good night, everyone.